Mr. Hyde by Robert Louis Stevenson. It's quite a strange story. It's quite short, somewhere between a short story and a novella. It's definitely not a novel. He wrote it after he'd written Treasure Island, Kidnapped, and a few other things. And it was a sensation when it was published. It was very popular and very successful for him. The problem with reading it today, though, is the fact that Mr. Hyde and Dr. Jekyll are the same person is one of the most widely known and famous things in the world. In fact, I've just said it then, but I doubt there's anybody watching this who will feel like I've just said a spoiler, because it is so well known. But the point of the story is that that's a twist, and you're not supposed to know it. In fact, it's only until very near the end that you put the pieces together, or the story suggests that you put the pieces together and figure out that Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde are one and the same person. So it's a real massive shame, because it takes a huge thing away from the story. You read the whole story knowing full well that they are the same person, and it's like, it's just really bad. Like, you can get an idea of how good the book probably was when it was published, and it is, because it's short, it's not any real chore to read, and it's definitely worth reading. And it is good to kind of get that Victorian impression of psychology, like right at the birth of psychology and psychiatry and all that kind of thing, looking at the actual workings of the inner mind and suppression of natural instinct and all these kind of themes are really well developed in the book. But like I said, it's just got this one big flaw that you already know the ending. And there's not much more I can say about it, really. I mean, I would recommend that you read it, but there's other greater books, because you don't know the twist, or the twist isn't so important. But this, it really is one of those early examples of the twist story, where if you try and read it again after you know, it's just not the same. So that's it. For anybody who doesn't know the story, which I can't believe there is, it's about a scientist who develops a compound that helps, that basically means that he can access the more primitive part of his mind. The story is told from the point of view of a third party. The narrator is this other person who watches Dr. Jekyll's sort of decline with great concern, and then sees this Mr. Hyde show up and be a friend of Dr. Jekyll's and seem to sort of, I can't think of the word, like waste his time and his money, but for some reason Dr. Jekyll constantly makes excuses for Mr. Hyde, and the narrator character is completely doesn't understand this relationship, gets really frustrated with it, is really upset for his friend, and all the time when I was reading it, I just knew straight from the beginning, well, that's because they're one and the same person. So it undermined the whole story, which is a real massive shame, because you get the idea that it was really shocking when it first came out and people first read it. They must have really been blown away at the twist. Having said that, it is very short, so it's not a huge challenge to read it, and it's a very rewarding story, because you do get the impression of what it would have been like. And also there's this kind of analysis of the inner psyche and all that thing, right from the birth of psychiatry and psychology and all those sorts of sciences. So, I mean, it's worth checking out, definitely. There's not really much more to say. I mean, yeah, that's it. Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, pretty good. There we go.